tourism puts over 7,200 people to work every day, full-time and part-time in Rapid City. It's an important employer. It provides a lot of opportunity, upward mobility. And I think if you look at the last 10 or 15 years, or probably if you could go back farther, it's just been a very consistent employer. So people who are in this industry should be so proud of that. I mean, it's been the backbone of so many good things in our community. So I celebrate the people who show up every day and work in this industry. It's only possible because we all show up and do our part.
Tourism is a top industry for South Dakota, right behind agriculture. As a matter of fact, last year, nearly 14.5 million people visited our state, and they spent a record $4.7 billion. Now, some people say that's the great thing about tourism. People come, they spend their money, and then they leave. But you know what? It's more than just that.
So tourism is the second top industry in the state, so obviously very important from a jobs perspective, from a sales tax perspective. But when you get a little bit closer to home, tourism is the #1 industry from a sales tax generation perspective here in Rapid City. So it's critical, employs a lot of people, creates quality of life for all of us who live here, so it's a really important industry for South Dakota.
So you're in charge of tourism and attracting tourists to Rapid City. You've been in the office now for a year?
Yep, just over a year.
So how's it going so far?
Amazing. It's really amazing to live in a destination that people want to visit. So there's so many things to see and do. We've got some really kind of iconic assets in our market where, they've been in the market for a long time, like Reptile Gardens or Bear Country. And then we've got always some neat things like restaurants or things to do or tours, like we brought the trolleys back online. So I just feel like it's a destination that has something for everyone. What an opportunity for us.
Okay, it's kind of, the location is interesting. I mean, you've got the Black Hills right in the foothills here. You got Mount Rushmore an hour away, and you've got the motorcycle rally every year, not too far away either. So you're in a prime location.
I agree. Yep. We also call Rapid City just the gateway to the Black Hills. So it's a nice place to come into the Black Hills, spend time, do spoke and hub tours, spend time in our other communities in the surrounding area. But we love to have them stay with us.
Now, there is a downside to tourism. Let's call them challenges. And one of those challenges is getting people to check out other things we have to offer here, besides Mount Rushmore or the motorcycle rally.
So I think a couple things are on our mind with the visitor economy here. One is, how do we make sure that people move around in a way that doesn't overtax the assets that people come for? So we've got 7 national parks and monuments in our area, but how do we move people around to the lesser known assets so that we take care of everyone in the area? So I would say moving people around the city is one of our challenges, or the area, right? Instead of just go to Mount Rushmore, just go to Crazy Horse.
I was going to say, they come here for those things specifically, the big name things, for lack of a better term. So how do you kind of guide them to the lesser known places?
Well, so most people actually, our average length of stay is 4 days. So it gives us the opportunity to say, what are you interested in? How long do you have? What are the things that you'd like to see and do? And build that itinerary that helps them get off the beaten path and really experience. And it benefits a lot of our other assets then, or our attractions and our business owners. So I would say that's challenge #1, but also a big one. And this really came to the forefront in 2021. When the state stayed open, we saw visitation really spike in 2020 and 2021. And one of the things that we've really focused on is care of place. So how do we take care of the things that we have to make sure that your kids and their kids can come back to the Black Hills and experience what we have today? So we call it stewardship, but we're really thinking about motorized, non-motorized, the natural resources that we have. How do we protect them? And not in a way that feels strange to people who are like, I don't believe in sustainability, but in a real way that says, we are stewards of what we're given and the time we're given to take care of them. How do we do our part to make sure they still live on? So that's another challenge.
I got to imagine that kind of bumps up with, it's my vacation, don't tell me what to do, and that sort of attitude.
Sure, right, sure. I think people come in and they want to experience our outdoor rec stuff, and a lot of people don't like to be told what to do. So how do we be respectful in how we communicate and educate to make sure we're doing our very best to take care of what we have?
Rapid City is more than just a gateway to the Black Hills, more than just a great place for a weekend getaway. Rapid City has its own culture to appreciate.
We have this really sacred and unique Native American culture in our area, and it's such a neat thing to experience. We've got retail locations that support it, events obviously that can show some of the neat things with that culture. And I hope more people take advantage of it maybe than maybe what we think they do. So I just feel like Rapids is this neat, eclectic destination of things that have been in here for a really long time, like reptile gardens, and then there's just so many cultural opportunities too. So I think there might be a misconception that we're just a one-trick pony in Rapid City, and that's certainly not true with the national parks, the monuments, the Native American culture.
Rapid City is already looking toward the future when it comes to tourism, and it involves sports.
So this community has said for a decade we'd really like to have a sports commission. We're super lucky we had the opportunity to create that earlier this year, have a director for that, and really start to focus on that youth sports segment to drive occupancy in those off-shoulder seasons for us.
Okay, does that include like the winter time?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about off-shoulder.
Oh yeah, so instead of bringing people on peak, right, let some of that leisure business stay on peak, but that off peak where it's wrestling tournaments or youth basketball tournaments, like name it, some of those indoor sports. So sports is a really big opportunity for us in the future too. One of the things that we are really noticing this year is that the meeting segment is rebounding finally after COVID. So it took a long time for businesses to let their workers travel. It took a long time for that segment to rebound as they were going to host meetings. And we're just seeing it come back really strong this year. So I would say business traveler and the meeting or conventioneers, right? So that's going to continue to be a very important segment for us. So I would say whatever we can do to continue to maintain the assets that we have in that, right? So we're limited only by size of some of our properties, right? And what they are able to accommodate. So we're always very creative. They work with us super well, but I would hope somewhere in the future there's an opportunity maybe for some new assets, expanded asset opportunity in the meeting space. So I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that, but I look at meetings and they're just so robust this year. It's been unbelievable what we're seeing in that space.
Well, you are lucky in the fact that you do have some venues.
We have great venues, yeah.
But you want bigger and more.
Or more creative ways to get people here, but yeah, sometimes those bigger conventions we just can't host, right? We're just not quite big enough. So I think about how do we close the gap on that? But it really is unbelievable that people, like a lot of inbound, we'd really like to meet in Rapid City. We'd really like to meet in Rapid City. So how do we continue to help close that gap and get people here?
It's a balancing act to try to convince more and more people to visit West 605 and at the same time try to protect what we already know about this area. It's a very special place.
I used to work at a television station near Yellowstone National Park. Without fail, every tourist season we get press releases about someone actually walking up to a bison and trying to pet it. I'm not making this up. Or else they try to pet an elk or maybe a mama moose. And the results were always the same, never good. At Wind Cave National Park, they don't have to worry about that so much.
You know, a bison is one of those animals that look a lot bigger if you don't have any glass between you and them. If you're standing there, much larger. And the thing about bison is that they're very irritable animals, and especially on hot days when the flies are kind of bothering them and the heat's bothering them, and you just don't want to get too close. If you get so close that they change their behavior, like they look at you or they stop eating or whatnot, then you're too close. And they can run 35 miles an hour, and they're very large animals. So we definitely want people to give them some space. One of our saving graces is we have a large fence around the developed areas, around the campground and also around the headquarters and visitor center. So because of that, you're not getting out of your car and potentially encountering one if you didn't know was there. You know, there's a lot of parks like Yellowstone there you can literally walk outside your front door and have a bison, lying on your yard. Yeah. And so that kind of helps. But you just need to be careful because it's pretty easy to get into trouble if you're not careful.
So you have a campground here.
Yeah, we have a campground.
Am I going to wake up one morning to an elk or a bison sitting outside my tent?
Well, not unless you, for some reason, chose to sleep by the fence. I mean, there's a large bison fence that goes around the campground also. So you might see some bison, you might hear some elk, but they're not going to be in your campsite.
Wind Cave National Park is one of those lesser-known places in West 605 that's well worth the drive, because it has a little bit of everything.
It was the 8th national park created, and visiting Wind Cave is like visiting two parks in one. We have the surface area, 30 miles of hiking trails, mixed grass prairie, a lot of wildlife. And on the surface, we're one of the smallest parks around, national parks around. But beneath the surface, we're one of the largest. We have 164 miles of explored passageway.
Wow.
And they estimate we have around 2,000 to 3,000 leads, 2,000 to 3,000 unexplored holes. They're exploring it all the time, getting longer and longer. And there's 4 things that make the cave significant. One is culturally, we're considered the emergent site for the Lakota. Geologically, we're significant because of our length, but also because of our complexity. We have 164 miles crammed under 1.2 square miles on the surface. So if you were to walk through the cave and go one of our tours, you'll see dozens and dozens of holes leading off from the tour route. It's just very honeycombed down there. And then we have a rare formation called boxwork that hangs from the walls and the ceilings. So if you come here expecting to see your typical things like stalactites and stalagmites, you're not going to see those, but you're going to see something even rarer, something that most people don't see unless you come to Wind Cave. I mean, other caves have some, but nobody has as much as we do. And there's some places where the boxwork is so deep it hangs from the ceiling, they call it crate work instead.
Now, is that the honeycomb effect?
That's correct.
That I've seen
Yep.
the pictures of?
That's right. A calcite formation that formed when the limestone in between was dissolved away, and it left a harder calcite just outlining it.
You just said something that caught my attention, that this was the emergent site of
Yes.
Lakota,
Yes.
the Lakota people.
Yes, correct.
Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, this is where they believe they emerged from the spirit world onto this world, coming through the natural entrance, the opening that is just down the way here from us. Anecdotally, what I think is that I think people are coming from a long ways away, they come to see the cave, and the locals come to see the wildlife.
Interesting. Speaking of which, we noticed on the way in here, there are a few bison out there. So how many of those do you have?
Well, we have around 350 to 500. We do a capture operation every 2 years to send our live bison off to other places that either want to augment existing tribes, existing herds, or start new ones. Our visitation typically comes from the upper Midwest, Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, South Dakota. Then you can't overlook the fact that Denver's just a drive away, and then we get a lot of people coming up from Colorado.
Interesting, okay. So when they come here and they go through the cave tours, what's the most common thing you hear from the tourists?
That they didn't know we were here. That a lot of people just
Is that a good or a bad
well, a lot
thing?
of people just stumble on us. We looked at some studies that show that there's a large percentage of people that just make a decision to come here either the day of their tour or the day before their tour. So we're kind of a hidden gem within the National Park Service.
A hidden gem indeed. Beautiful scenery, 30 miles of hiking trails, campground sites, wildlife, historical and cultural significance, and of course, miles and miles of underground caves just waiting for you to discover.
One thing that makes us unique is that we're not like a typical drive-through park where you can see the park's primary resource by yourself. Here, to see the park's primary resource, the cave, you have to go in the cave with a ranger. So because of that, it really helps to have a large staff that can accommodate those visitors.
Okay, and then they say what after visiting the caves?
Well, they usually just say they had a great time. You know, it's like seeing the box work is obviously something a little bit different. You know, for people that want to do something really off the wall, is we offer in the summertime a wild cave tour where we give people a hard hat, a lamp, knee pads, elbow pads, and then we take you crawling.
Getting claustrophobic listening to you.
No, you could do this. You know, and then we take you through the cave crawling for about 3 hours, and you get an idea what the cave's really like. And so you really make an emotional connection with those type of tours.
The #1 tourist destination in South Dakota has been called a shrine to democracy, talking about Mount Rushmore National Memorial. Every year, millions of people from all over the world travel here to get a glimpse of those 4 iconic faces, and they definitely make an impact.
It was really cool to hear a little bit about how they were creating it and all the different art techniques that were used to create the light and the shadow so it looked realistic. I thought that was really impressive and interesting to hear how unfinished it is. It's unfinished because the sculptor died, and it's like, oh, well, you know, that happens in life, that, you know, you have a grand plan, you have work that you want to do, and sometimes you don't have all the time you want to finish it.
It's amazing to see this. Before we came here, we were looking some videos on YouTube just to know the history. Besides that, before we became a U.S. citizen, we need to learn about the history. My kiddos love it, the history, how they build this, all the process. all the background. Besides that, the founders of these countries is right there. That means a lot for us.
For me, this is a dreams come true. I saw this place, I watched it in the document, even when I was a child, but this is like a dreams for me. Believe me, it's like a dreams. I love this country. I love United States history. It's very beautiful place, history, and people too.
The number one tourist event in West 605 is, any guesses? The Sturgis Motorcycle Rally. Every year it draws hundreds of thousands of visitors to Sturgis and the rest of the Black Hills area. Now, back in the day, people attending the rally did not have a reputation for being well-mannered. As a matter of fact, things could get downright out of control sometimes. But today, that's all changed, for the most part.
The bikers kind of police themselves, and we have a large police presence here. We've kind of got it pretty well down. People are educated on what can go on in the city and what can't, and that helps a lot.
Well, yeah, if they're return visitors, that sort of thing, you would assume that they know the drill, so to speak.
Right.
But I'm going to press you on that note. When it comes to the rally, what are the biggest issues that you have with the attendees?
Well, the ones I'm aware of, and the chief of police would probably say different, but the ones that I'm most aware of is violation of the open container. Open container must be in our special events cup that each bar here sells. You can't have an open beer in public unless it's in that container, and only beer and wine. The state law states that you cannot have hard alcohol on the streets. So we can't have a Jack and Coke in that cup. We have to have beer and wine only. That's a big violation.
Who polices that? I'm sorry, that looks like a Jack and Coke in that cup there. Who does that?
Well, the officers do, but also my staff will go around, and if we see that, we'll just say, this is the law, please go back into the bar and drink your drink, and then you can have a beer or wine out here. And most people are okay with that. They just don't understand that it's not the old free-for-all that Sturgis was 30 years ago.
Then again, some things never change.
Public intoxication or public urination, where they're gonna get stopped for that, and they might have some drug paraphernalia on them, and then they end up in jail. It's things like that that we still deal with on a daily basis, but the people here are so great. The visitors we have come to the rally. We have a great crew working. The chief does a great job getting his police trained. It's really done very well in the last 20, 30 years.
In fact, the city of Sturgis has done so well learning and evolving since the early days of the motorcycle rally. It's now become known as a destination for a lot of different tourist events.
We have events running from May through the end of September. Camaro Rally, we just finished last week. We have the off-road rally coming up in September, Music Fest. We have the motorcycle rally. The Mustang Rally is here. We're not in charge of that, but that comes here for a couple weeks in September as well. So it's just a very busy time. Our city has 7,000 people, and we have extra wells that we have dug that we don't have to use year-round. We have them just for our tourists, several extra wells for that. We have a huge sewage plant that we have built that we don't necessarily need for our 7,000 residents that live here year-round, but...
So you've got 7 additional tourist wells, and you've
several, not 7.
Okay, several different tourist wells, and then you've got a special tourist sewage plant.
Well, we use those year-round, the sewage plant, but we wouldn't need that large of a plant if it wasn't for, thank goodness, all the tourists that come to visit us. So it's things like that that people don't always think of. The infrastructure that the city of Sturgis has had to put in to accommodate everybody and make sure that we don't have any failures for the water system or the sewer system or our streets is pretty incredible when you stop and think about what it entails.
So is it fair enough to say, for the most part, you have a pretty well-behaved motorcycle rally crowd coming here?
I think so, but don't hex me.
Okay, all right, try not to jinx you there, okay. So when it comes to promoting all of the events here, how much of your time and effort and money goes into drawing in tourists to Sturgis?
We spend quite a bit of money getting people here. The rally is pretty easy. That's a big, it's been here for 82 years. But we spend some money on promoting Sturgis the rest of the year, all of our shoulder seasons and summer, because it is so beautiful here. We have bicycle riding. The trails here are incredible for that. We have off-road vehicles that can go. We have music. We have, it's just a mecca of anything you want to do here.
Is it true, would it be a true statement to say that tourism makes Sturgis what it is today? And when I say that, let me qualify it. When I say that, I mean, wonderful buildings here, the infrastructure, the stage behind us, things like that. This is all paid for by tourism money.
Yes, the tourism money, the taxes that they pay and everything definitely has helped the city pay for some things. Of course, we can't let go of the locals. They support us year round, so they are incredible too. The ranchers, the agriculture community that comes in, that used to be top. Tourism is right there with it. They help promote everything and pay for everything that we can build here for our community year round. The community center, the music on Main events that we can do, all of that helps a lot.
We've got a good thing going on here, and more people need to know about it. Sturgis, Mount Rushmore, Wind Cave, Downtown Rapid, and all the other places we like to experience and cherish here in West 605.